wanted to ask you about the rising number of cases in your state of COVID-19 right now. A lot of people are worried about it. It's been substantial over the last couple of days. What do you think led to that rise? And do you think that, opening up too soon or these protests had anything to do with it?
Well, I just encourage everyone to understand that the key number is not necessarily the number of cases. The key number is what percentage of those being tested are coming back positive. Because if you test more people, the more people you test, the more cases you're going to identify. The question is whether the percentage of people testing positive is going up or going down. And the other key test is hospitalization. What does the hospitalization rate look like? Because that is going to let you know that's going to be the second early warning trigger that you have a problem. So far it appears that with the exception of Arizona and a couple other states, those numbers, like in Georgia and in Florida, have remained relatively stable. And in the case of Florida, the infection rate continues to drop. Look, we're learning more about this disease every single day. We're learning to live with it. We are continuing to see across the country enforcing the social distancing rules, wearing masks and things of that nature. In my own office, we've gone to a structured system where I have employees work for 4 days and then take 10 days off, and then the second shift comes in and does the same. I mean, they work from home. The key is to keep them apart from each other over a 14-day period so that if someone is infected, you don't have to quarantine the entire staff. Everyone's adapting to this, and we're going to have to continue to find ways to adapt to it until we have a vaccine or some other solution. So, that's what we're going to keep an eye on and certainly continue to improve on. And I also think our doctors and nurses deserve tremendous amount of credit. They've gotten much better. They've learned a lot. They've actually set the standard around the world for treating COVID patients, and you're seeing the survival rates improve, not as a result of a cure, but as a result of the innovative things these doctors and nurses and medical professionals have done to get onto these cases early before they spiral out of control.
I know you had tweeted in the beginning of some of these protests, warning of foreign interference, of foreign actors kind of coming in and sowing divisions between Americans, which we've seen in the past. Even a tweet of mine may have been blown up by Russian bots. What do you have to say to Americans who may be seeing a lot of fighting going on online, and how can they know if they're foreign adversaries?
Well, number one, understand that these divisions aren't created by our foreign adversaries. They exist. They're already there. This issue of social injustice and inequities is longstanding in our country. So what our foreign adversaries do is they exploit our existing divisions. They don't create them. And I would say that if you look at it, there's plenty of antagonism online already without these guys getting involved. But some of them are better than others, and they're very good at it. Some of the things they do is they put up videos from 10 years ago or 5 years ago and claim it just happened. Others, target audiences to try to inflame them. This is just going to be an ongoing challenge. We are you can't do that in Russia. You can't do that in Iran. You can't do that in China. But in America, we're an open society. And as a result, this is going to be a challenge. And I think the lesson for all Americans is don't allow yourself to be inflamed by social media. Don't allow yourself to govern what you believe and everything you do by what you just read on Twitter 5 minutes ago. And that I think is a lesson to apply, not just because of foreign interference, but because there's some crazy people online who frankly sit around all day and they're keyboard cowboys who have nothing better to do but say snarky things and attack other people. So I wouldn't allow your worldview or anyone's worldview to be solely set by what you just read on the internet.
I know you guys have hurricane season upcoming. We've already seen a number of tropical depressions and different storms. Is FEMA ready for this upcoming season? Do you have any concerns about that?
Well, I think they're as ready as they can be. Look, it's important to know that FEMA is not the frontline responder of a natural disaster. In this country, our model is as such, where the frontline response to a natural disaster is the state and local governments. And then FEMA comes in to support them, and whatever it is the state and local governments tell them that they need. I believe that FEMA is prepared to fit that to fill that role for the state of Florida. That said, I can tell you Florida, because unfortunately experience, is the best in the country at preparing for hurricanes. And my only advice to Floridians is this hurricane season, more than any other, just make sure that those basic supplies you're going to need, you get them now. Don't wait until there's a storm warning, because of social distancing, because of supply chain disruptions, the lines are going to be longer and much harder if you wait until the news tells you there's a storm coming. So have your stuff ready earlier than ever. I mean, most years, most people sort of put it off and then you rush to stores. This year is probably the best year ever to sort of have all those things in place beforehand. So if in fact we do have a storm warning or watch, you're not standing in these incredibly long lines because you're 6 feet apart, because of social distancing, and you end up finding out a lot of these things ran out because there's already a shortage of them as a result of the pandemic. So that's probably the best piece of advice I can give everyone, and one that I took myself last weekend, started to collect some things, and we'll do more about this weekend as well.
And my last question for you, I know we've seen a number of top prominent Republicans who have come out saying that they are unsure if they could support President Trump in this upcoming election. We heard it from Lisa Murkowski, George W. Bush. Where do you stand on that, and do you agree with any of their sentiments?
Elections are binary choices in America, you know, and in America, the binary choice can be between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And I'm sorry to say to everybody who may be disappointed by this, but it's not a very hard choice for me to make. Joe Biden will dismantle. If he becomes president, he will dismantle many of the things that I pushed for or worked hard on over the last 3 or 4 years on foreign policy, on domestic policy, you name it. He'll appoint people to the bench that it'll be tough for me to support. He'll appoint people to the cabinet that I'll strongly disagree with. So I don't think there's much of a choice here in that regard from my perspective. You don't have to agree with someone on every issue to understand that they are better than the alternative. And in this particular case, to me, that choice is crystal clear. I mean, Joe Biden will undo all of the things that we've worked so hard to achieve in this country, from my perspective, over the last 3.5 years. So I'm supporting President Trump against Joe Biden, and I'll do so without reservation.
Do you think President Trump needs to do something in this moment to bring people together? I know a lot of people were very critical of his moves last week with the protesters in front of the church. Is there anything that you think he needs to do at this time?
Well, I want to be frank. It's hard to analyze criticism of President Trump or react to it because everything he does is going to be criticized. Literally everything. You know, when he imposed a ban on travel from China, when this crisis emerged, he was called a xenophobe and a hater and told it was unnecessary. And then later on, he was criticized for not doing enough. What I will say to all leaders is 2 things. Number one is last week was a time in which we saw extremist radicals, who I pointed out very early across the political spectrum, as has now been confirmed by the Attorney General, out in the streets, setting fires, hurting innocent people, looting, committing atrocious acts of violence, even murder. And that had to stop. And that is separate from the peaceful and legitimate protests, which raise a valid issue that we have to confront as a country. And I think the president tried to make that distinction. But, you know, whether he could have done a better job of it, I'm sure he would agree that, all of us could have done a better job at discussing these sorts of issues. It's a difficult one to confront. But at the end of the day, it's hard to respond to criticism or analyze criticism of President Trump because there's a group of frankly, people out there that'll criticize whatever he does and disagree with anything he says. So it's not like we're in normal times here.